Welcome to Center Stage. My name is Mark Gordon. Every Tuesday night, we love to talk about film, and tonight is no exception. We're joined tonight by John C. Clark. He has a new film that's going to be screening this weekend, a new homoerotic evangelical exorcism movie called Closer Walk with Thee. This is your first feature film. What was it about this film that resonated with you and you said, look, this is what I want to make?
I was raised in a really conservative Baptist environment. So, of course, I always joke that, I ended up being a gay atheist. But I also got really into horror over the years. And while I love religious horror, the majority of it's kind of based more in Catholicism, which it makes sense because there's a lot of really great rituals to mine from there. But I wanted something that kind of resembled my own childhood and like that background more for other people who'd been raised in kind of evangelical homes. So I approached my friend Bree, who we'd been kind of talking about maybe developing something. And I told her I want to make a horror film that has evangelical hymnal music in it from the 19th century. She was completely on board. She did some research, found out about a couple things, that there's these evangelical groups that rather than sending missionaries abroad, they send them into inner cities. And then there's also this growing movement of churches that are called deliverance churches. And basically they're evangelicals that believe in demonic possession and exorcisms. So we kind of combined all of that and came up with this story.
So how long did it take you to make the film?
It's been in production since pre-production, since we first started, about 3 years.
Well, there's a lot happened over those 3 years.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a lot of weight on your, your right shoulder there? What happened?
Let's see. Well, we were developing it. We had to figure this out. You know, this was, while I was raised evangelical, we were dealing with stuff that was kind of far out of our realm.
Like what?
Like the exorcism thing. So we just did a lot of research watching these evangelical exorcists online, kind of became obsessed with a few of them, kind of became fans. And one of them travels around the country doing exorcisms in like churches and hotel conference rooms. And he was performing at the LAX Marriott. And
performing?
Well, I use the word performing. I don't think he would call it that. So Bree and I actually went down there one day when he was doing this show. As soon as we walked in, he beelined it for us. He could spot that we did not fit in. It was actually funny because they were having a horror convention in the same hotel. I think he thought we were going the wrong place. But we tried to dress respectful, and he was really interested in where we'd come from, and we just said we were intrigued by what he was doing, and we'd seen his videos on YouTube. I bought a book from him, and then he started, and it was a really informative experience, both in like teaching us kind of the language that we needed to be using in these exorcisms, because they don't look anything like the exorcisms you see in like The Exorcist. There's no supernatural happenings, and that was also like a big something that informed us, and that we wanted to make sure that I guess it could be open to interpretation, but we didn't want to show anything that suggested that this was definitely real.
You were obsessed with this exorcism, and then and you spent some time with this gentleman. Yeah,
well, we didn't talk to him much. I mean, he came and talked to us, but I mean, it was, like I said, that night really informed us. So from there, I guess we developed the treatment. We developed the screenplay, started figuring out how we were going to do this. One thing, I'm a big believer in like limitations and how they can actually kind of inspire creativity. So I gave Bree a lot of limitations when she was developing the script.
How does a limitation inspire creativity?
For example, we have a shot in our movie that was originally planned on being a dolly shot. It's actually a shot that's in the trailer, and it's probably my favorite shot in the film. It was originally planning on being kind of a traditional dolly shot, moving back down the hallway following the person. I set a limitation on my camera department in that there was no camera movement allowed in the entire film. It would strictly be editing. And that was one of the first scenes that became a question of, well, how do we solve this? And we ended up just putting an extra wide lens on the camera and dropping it on the floor. And it actually created something far creepier than I think the dolly shot would have done. So the same thing happened with Bree. So I told her, you have a single location, you have this many people as a casting or as cast, try not to break it. And every time she'd want to, she'd kind of approach me like, hey, can we do a scene in this location, or can we add these characters? And so I would immediately react with, well, what's kind of the purpose of that? Like, what's the goal that you're trying to get? And then we would kind of go back and forth trying to find something that would answer her need in the script in terms of telling the story, but would also keep us on our really low budget. And I think she was happy with all of the compromises we made there. I don't know. She'll probably call me as soon as I leave here and tell me something like she wasn't. I think it caused her to kind of come up with some more creative ways of solving some of the problems.
So you're going to have a screening on Sunday, the 19th.
That's correct.
10 p.m.
Yeah, it was just accepted into the Hollywood Reel Independent Film Festival, where we also won the award for Best LGBTQ Film. So it'll be screening on Sunday night at 10 p.m. That's kind of late, but Monday's fortunately a holiday. That will be its actual world premiere. And then we have some more festival news on the pipeline that we can't announce yet, but something else.
Is there a number if somebody wants to get tickets for Sunday?
So it's on the Hollywood Reel Independent Film Festival.com website, but it actually goes to an Eventbrite page that has all of the movies on one page. The easiest thing is to do a Control F find on the page and just search for the word closer. Our movie's the only one with that word in it.
So it's a homoerotic evangelical exorcism film. I would think that might kind of, when you codify something like that might limit an audience that might see this film. Were you concerned about that, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, well, we were definitely trying to make something that would be interesting to both queer audiences and horror audiences. I don't think you necessarily need to be queer in any way to appreciate the story of the main character who's struggling between his sexuality and his religious views. Although, if you're a horror fan, it probably makes it a little more attractive. But yeah, I mean, that was definitely kind of a concern. But also, those film festivals have, like, queer and horror festivals have really devout fans. So we're hoping we get some people watching it. One thing that these group of churches do that is kind of interesting is that they use the possession as an excuse for your problems. Like, if you're a drug addict, it's not your fault. One of your ancestors many years ago performed some horrible ritual and sacrificed a baby, and that's why you now are an alcoholic, or why you are having homoerotic urges. They blame a lot of things that we would consider just part of who you are, or psychological concepts, on possession. Our character, he's first suggested. So what happens in the film is basically there's these 4 missionaries, 2 men, 2 women, that move into South Central Los Angeles. They think they're going to start a church and save the neighborhood from a local gang. The main character, Jordan, is secretly attracted to the lead pastor of the group. And when the group finds out that he's gay, they suggest maybe he's possessed. And he starts acting out on this, which causes them to start doing exorcisms to get the gay demon out of him, which, of course, devolves into a horror film. It's really like the first half to 2/3 of the film is really a drama about this boy struggling. But it's the fundamentalism of their belief system that pushes it into the horror realm.
So how did it start out for you, John?
What do you mean?
Did you always want to be a filmmaker?
No. I mean, when I was in college, I was an English major and a theater major in my undergrad. I'm a textbook editor right now in my day job. A few years back, I started writing movie reviews for my friend's blog. That kind of made me start wanting to be creative again and not just writing about other people's creativity. So I started taking classes at LACC, the community college. Made a couple shorts, got my first short into Outfest a few years back. It's a dark comedy.
Was that bloody lesbian melodrama?
Yes, and it's exactly what it sounds like.
So is there like a gay horror theme that resonates with you?
Well, that's not really horror. That's it's really just a bloody dark comedy. It's 4 minutes of these 2 characters just being completely passive-aggressive with each other. It devolves into a fight, and then it just becomes bloody. And no one finds it scary. Everyone that sees it just laughs. My next big project that's actually out there was kind of an erotic horror that was really heavily influenced by Kenneth Anger. He's a filmmaker I really admire, for the band Xiu Xiu. That definitely was more in the horror realm. Horror is a good way for independent filmmakers to kind of start out.
Why is that?
There's an audience that will that wants to see it, and they kind of will forgive some low budget issues. Like, low budget drama films don't really play really well. Even though our film does have a lot of drama in it, there's still this tension building towards this horror. So you can kind of forgive some of the low budgetness, I guess. Although our movie's not a B movie. Filmmakers that are just starting out really want to experiment. They want to play with things. They want to try ideas out. You can't really do that necessarily in just a straight drama or comedy. Horror has a history of having crazy camera work and like unrealistic lighting, and it's a good way to kind of play with your influences and what you want to do. And
who were some of your influences?
They're kind of all over the board. In this film, it's kind of funny because of the static camera thing. Our primary influences were probably, there's this Polish film about a nun struggling with her religion, but the entire movie shot with a static camera and has religious themes. So that was something we taught, like me and my camera person discussed a lot. My cinematographer. Also Ozu, the Japanese filmmaker, because of his framing, that was a big influence on the look, at least. And then of course as well Kenneth Anger. In terms of like horror films, Bree and I bonded over Texas Chainsaw Massacre when we first met.
What is it about horror that you are drawn to, and why do you think people are obsessed with horror films?
I don't know. It lets you explore ideas that you're not necessarily comfortable with. Like, I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like a masterpiece of tension, but it also deals with like real life news articles that they were influenced by. I don't know. Sometimes it's interesting to kind of delve into that darker side. I don't know. I mean, my next film may not be a horror. I have a couple ideas out there. I think it's definitely going to delve into the darker realms, but I don't know. Horror is just fun.
Horror is just fun. We're joined tonight by John C. Clark. He has a new film that's going to be screening this weekend. It's called Closer Walk with Thee. Once again, it's a homoerotic evangelical exorcism movie.
Yeah, queer horror is easier, probably.
Queer horror. What did you learn from making the film?
So much. There's a lot of actors in LA that are incredible that don't have work. And actors are treated terribly. We did our own casting, and we contacted at least everyone that we had callbacks with to at least let them know that we weren't casting them. And we were shocked to find no one gets those emails, and it just seemed like common courtesy. I learned that I don't know, it's really hard to make a feature film in only $35,000. But I also learned that there's a lot of passionate people that will work with you for very little money as long as they care about the project. And on the actor thing, a kind of weird, funny story. I also learned that sometimes people don't even want to get pushed in auditions. For one of the characters, we had the scene for audition be a scene where she was being exorcised. There was 2 short scenes, but one of them was an exorcism. And the actress seemed on board with it until she saw the sides, and she got really nervous. And she said she was afraid of performing possessed because it might actually make her possessed. I really wanted to see this actress. I loved her reel. There was so much about her I loved. So I called her. I talked with her about our intentions. But ultimately, she just was she was obviously a person of faith. And while she appreciated what we were trying to do and kind of this anti-fundamentalist point, she was so nervous about actually becoming possessed that she refused to be involved. There's some difficult concepts in the film.
So she obviously didn't get the part.
She didn't do it. And I mean, in many ways, it was probably probably helped out. It turned out there was a friend of mine who was perfect for the role that I hadn't even thought of because...
Who had been possessed.
No, she was a fellow filmmaker, and I see her as a director. I've worked with her on projects, as a director. I've shot projects for her, so I see her as a director. I always forget she's an actress, even though she's always talking about going to auditions. And I told her about it, and she reminded me. She's like, because the character was supposed to be from El Salvador, and she's like, I'm Central American, and I was like, I can't believe it. And she was fantastic. I mean, her performance is fantastic, so that probably helped out. But even because the subject matter is a little difficult, even once we decided on our final cast, we reached out to each of the actors and said, this is everything that's in the script. Are you comfortable with this?
Because there's nudity as well, right?
There's nudity.
How do you approach that with the actors?
So first, you kind of spell everything out in advance. You spell out every shot that's going to be even partially nude is on a list, and you go through that with them and make sure that they're comfortable with all of those, and that they understand what the point is. In our case, we even had one moment of nudity that the actor felt was too much, and so we kind of went back and forth, and we found kind of the right point. So they're both male actors in our film have some, like, at least partial nudity. And then just on the set, if there's going to be nudity, you have a limited set. You only have the crew members on location that are absolutely necessary. I mean, we had our script supervisor hiding in a closet so that she could hear what was going on, but she couldn't actually see it. Our sound guy was actually not in the room during one scene that we shot. He actually hid microphones on all the various positions that they would be, just so that the actors would feel as comfortable as possible. You give them time. You let them take some time. And then, of course, you don't force anyone into it.
What was your favorite part about working on the film and your least favorite?
My favorite was, like, working with the cast and crew. I mean, they're insane hours.
You seem like an actor's director.
Actually, that's funny because as a co-director, the way Brie and I kind of broke it up, and these weren't codified rules, but she primarily worked with the actors, and I primarily worked on the tech side. And that doesn't mean that, like, if she didn't like a shot we were trying to set up or lighting something, that she still had a say in that. And there would often be times where I would ask for a certain type of performance different than what she was going for. But I generally dealt more with that. But I definitely respect actors. And so we wanted to make sure that they were comfortable. But we were also shooting a 90-page script in 10 days, which is 9 pages a day. Most movies shoot about 4. And, of course, every day we would get behind. We were shooting on location in a house that some friends of ours lived in. So we had people that actually lived in the house we were having to kind of move around in addition to everything else. So that's probably the time constraints and the money constraints. That's probably my least favorite. But working with the crew that wanted to be there and the cast that wanted to be there, that was amazing. And actually because we kept getting so many pages behind, we shot 17 and a half pages on our last day. But what made that happen was because while we would be shooting one scene, our grips and electrics would actually be in the next room in the next scene pre-lighting. So once we were done with that scene, our actors would move in, we'd put them into place, adjust, like figure out what we needed to adjust. Grip and Electric would make those adjustments. We would start shooting, and Grip and Electric would move on to our next room and start lighting that. On a normal film set, a lot of the crew spends half the day kind of taking a break. If the actors are on set, the crew's relaxing. If the crew's on set, the actors are relaxing. And we were asking them to basically run nonstop, and they wanted to do it because they wanted to reach this goal with us. So that's probably, almost like half the people that were on that set were at my wedding. So when you look at the experience of making your first big feature film, what's that one thing what's that touchstone that you'll take with you into future creative endeavors? I guess trust my instincts. I trust the idea of trust. Yeah, trust my cast and crew. You have to find good people, of course. There's always going to be someone on set who's going to make something difficult. You want to work with people that you want to be around with 12 hours a day for nonstop, minimum 12 hours a day. But also, I guess, trust my instincts, trust the idea that, I do believe that limitations make things more creative, or makes people be more creative. And so even if I did have a movie with a bigger budget, I think I would still probably set myself certain limitations.
It seems like this issue of trust is the value of trust is very important to you. Tell me about an experience that you had where you had to trust yourself, and in doing that you learned that, wow, it's challenging, but the payoff is so great.
Okay, so that limitation of the camera movement,
But what's something about you?
About me outside of the film?
Because you bring your values into your work, and this notion of trust and trusting that you're heading in the right direction, that you can get the job done. What's an experience that you had where you were forced to really trust yourself, and you took that chance and you learned from that experience? Tell me about that.
I guess actually just trying to even just make this movie overall was just like, I mean, the idea that, you know, I had this idea that we could make a feature film and $35,000. We could do a Kickstarter for $35,000 and actually somehow raise that much money. We put a year's worth of effort into developing this before we got to that point. That's a year of my life that you know, if it didn't happen, I would have been wasting all those nights. And I have a full-time job during the day. So it was literally, you know, full-time job in the daytime, get home, and I'm on the computer, I'm on the phone, I'm working, I'm in meetings, working. So I put a lot into that, and with no proof that anything would ever come of it. So yeah, I did trust my instincts. And
what kept you going during that time? Because some people might give in and quit.
I have a lot of support. My family have been incredibly supportive. My now husband, I just got married in October. I mean, I really couldn't have done this without him. He's the very first person we thank in the credits, and I mean, I literally couldn't have done it without him. There's just so much support he's given us.
Do you think that the landscape has changed, that you can make a film like this, whereas 10, 15 years ago, you probably wouldn't have gotten this film made?
Right. Well, there are like films in the past that kind of hinted at maybe certain ideas like this. There are queer horror films, but they're hidden. They're not blatantly so. It's kind of like, there's this documentary called Celluloid of the Closet that details how, in order to make gay characters, the filmmakers had to hide them in kind of insert a code that only gay audiences would pick up on it. So, you know, when you watch a movie like Rebel Without a Cause, a gay audience is watching a completely different, or sees at least the Salminio character in a completely different way than a non-queer audience. And then, like, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is considered by many to be a classic queer horror film. But no one knew it. Like, the screenwriter knew it, but none of the people working on the film knew it.
Do you think also, too, gay characters have... the way they're portrayed in film has changed?
Yeah, I think, in the 90s, I think, is when you really start to see a change in queer cinema. So it was over 15 years ago, but those initial films, you have a lot of like kind of stereotypical romantic comedies. Our film in some ways is kind of a look at that, and like, but perverting it a little bit, where, it's like the gay boy's in love with the straight boy. The straight boy finds out, it causes tension, and then either the straight boy turns out to actually be gay, or they become friends, and then the gay boy meets a new gay boy. That was kind of like the stereotypical structure of like gay cinema, and for lesbian films as well. There were a couple other ones, but that's kind of like a consistency we saw for like decades. So we were actually kind of playing with that idea, and that's our movie kind of starts that way. It just doesn't end that way.
So when will it be finished? After you have your screening, have you gotten distribution yet on the film?
No, we haven't gotten distribution. This is our first festival, and so we have submitted to a number of other festivals. So we are hopefully, we know one thing is coming in the future. We're hoping that there's more, that this is an ongoing thing, that we get into a bunch of festivals. We hope we find a distributor, probably for an online platform, even though I love it so much more in the theater because of the surround mix. That's our next step, is trying to find someone that believes in the movie as much as we do.
The film is going to be screening at the Hollywood Real Independent Film Festival on Sunday, February 19th at 10 o'clock. If you'd like tickets or more information, go to HollywoodRealIndependentFilmFestival.com, or
yep.
Yeah, so look for them online. Well, best of luck come Sunday, and your cast is going to be there, and there's going to be a Q&A.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of cast and crew. Bree just recently moved back to Portland, where she's originally from, so she'll be there. So my co-director, producer.
Is this the first time you're going to see it with an audience, the film?
The finished product. We did a single rough cut screening, like a couple months, or like or late last year.
Are you nervous?
With just like cast and crew, basically. Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm mostly nervous about my parents seeing it.
Why is that?
Well, like, when we first started developing it, I discussed with my mom and with both my parents, because they are religious people, and I respect that. Their religion has caused them. They're foster parents that take care of medically fragile children. Their religion has inspired them to be beautiful people, but it's also dealing with the subject matter that's a little close. So while they don't necessarily believe into the kind of the extreme fundamentalism that's going on in our film. I'm still a little nervous that they're not going to like it. So, but hopefully they do.
What would constitute success for you on this film?
I mean, of course, we'd like to get it distributed. That would be great. But really, my number one priority is like, we want to meet people. We want to like develop something new. We wanted this to be a starter. Brie and I loved working together, and hopefully we'll be able to work together in the future. We're hoping that this is just kind of a beginning of making some kind of edgier, kind of different, independent film, whether we go queer, horror. Right now I'm researching the alt-right, whatever.
No. It's not the alt-right.
You want to see a horror movie about the alt-right.
The fascist white.
Right.
I hate what they've coined this alt-right term.
Right, no, and I want
People they should call them what they are.
Yeah, so what about a horror where they're calling themselves that, but it becomes very clear? I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet.
There's all that pent-up sexuality that's they're acting out in a bad way.
Maybe.
Well, John C. Clark, thank you so much for taking time to come out and be on the show with us tonight. The name of the film, once again, is A Closer Walk with Thee, and it's going to be screening this Sunday at Hollywood Real Independent Film Festival. And that's on February 19th at 10 p.m. Is that going to be up in Hollywood?
No, it's at the Regal Cinemas in LA Live in downtown.
Oh, that's a cool.
They're really great
cool
theaters.
venue.
I'm also really excited about seeing it in like actually really good theaters.
The big screen. All right. Well, thank you so much. And just a reminder, you can listen to Center Stage every Tuesday night right here on KXLU Los Angeles. We're also streaming on the net at kxlu.com. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you can send me an email, and my address is mark@stageandscreen.com. Until next week, this is Mark Gordon, and I will see you center stage.